Like, I wonder if the person that created, or invented CSRF was
like 2002.
whoa,
Yeah,
like,
it's like
I can make. What if I force the user? Let me log into my bank and see if this works. Like,
yeah.
And that's like the original write up. It's like passing around material on the dark web, like. For bank.com, you can trigger transfers. I don't know why that's my voice for early day hackers. Like maybe
it's me, early 2000s.
Yeah, exactly. No, Joel, you're sitting, man. This is if we're gonna debate this, you need to stand up.
Okay.
Like
I just wanted to show off my new headrest. That's all.
Oh, that is good looking, man. You get a new chair?
No, same chair. So, oh my god, sorry, I have something in my mouth.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I started it like right as you put something into your mouth.
Yeah.
What is it, like caramel or something like that? You're chewing
it's like
a maniac.
It's a chewy, it's a ginger thing. Anyways, this company Atlas, they make like the Herman Miller of like third-party headrests, and the Embody headrest has been in like pre-orders for like 6 months. So I ordered mine back in December, and it finally came like a week or two ago.
Dude.
So it's been like a huge, nice improvement to an already amazing chair. So yes, but that's it. I'll stand up.
All right, that's like the geekiest thing I've ever. You pre-ordered a headset or a headrest for your chair. There we go. Now let's rise and let's debate. Okay. So
all
right. So you say so before we ran the live recording, Joe was saying there's no such thing as a CSRF on mobile. I suspect this is a terminology difference, but yeah. All right. So here's what it is. All right. CSRF on mobile. Let's say, for example, we talked about this sort of on the mobile episode. It's like a deep link. Or like a what are they called? The app links that you can trigger that will trigger some sort of functionality in the app. So for example, if I can craft a link that like I've seen this before, has like a base 64 encoded, data blob in it, and that file gets like downloaded and put onto the user's device or something like that. And that's not the most perfect example. Maybe it's something on the lines of like add friend, equals 1, 2, 3, 4. And then like when you click that link, you automatically send them a friend request, right? I feel like that's a mobile CSRF. Is that not?
I mean, so like yes and no. I think to some extent you could count that as a CSRF, but it's not really. Like in the classical sense,
Why?
If you think about what a CSRF is, like a CSRF is a cross-site request forgery, right? And so
okay, Joel. Like it's not a site, come on, but it's an app.
Well, yeah, but it's not a site, but it's also like there is no restriction that you can put in place to like stop this. Like if you click a deep link, for example, like you said, if I click a deep link from my browser, nothing that gets passed through tells the app that I clicked that from attacker.com.
Okay, but like you could just not write functionality where someone can have a deep link that does something in the app unvalidated. Like there should be a screen that pops up and says, "Are you sure you want to add, Jimmy Jim as a friend?"
Yeah, sure, but like how do you detect that?
Well, no, there's no detection that's
exactly.
needed.
So like the reality is that like if you don't want this to be a thing, it has to be not exposed at all. Like that functionality cannot exist, right? If you want for somebody to be able to add a friend, either you have to have a separate route that is exposed that's like add friend confirm, and then like when they click that, then the app does different functionality where they confirm it explicitly. But the fact that deep link exists means that it will always be reachable if it's exposed. So either it can't be exposed or you have to, or
okay.
It either is or it isn't.
So
right?
So what you're saying is like, even though that functionality, you're saying there's no way to make that functionality secure if you want to have that functionality. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and so I think like the caveat to this and the bug that I picked as like an example for this, I think the best caveat I can think of is like JavaScript bridges. So that's like kind of the closest you can get to like a CSRF type of behavior where say like within a browser, within a web view, within the app, you are able to either call out to a different internal only URL schema,
or
a JavaScript
object.
bridge or something like that to trigger functionality within the app from an attacker website. That is something that you can stop. you can detect origin and stuff from a JavaScript bridge. You can do all that kind of stuff. But if, it's just the fact that the deep link exists and is callable externally, I wouldn't really call that a CSRF so much as an abuse of intended functionality.
Okay. So maybe that's
because it's not like blockable.
Maybe that's my like web brain trying to apply it to mobile. That's like the way that I've categorized it in my head to try to get, it to fit into my little context,
Yeah.
So I could see that. But I am a little disappointed though, because I definitely wanted there to be CARF, cross app request forgery. Like I feel like CARF, we could just like, Can you like make that a vulnerability?
That kind of exists too.
Okay.
I mean, like,
is that a real thing?
So I think like that's also a thing. For example, like intents, right? If like you create an intent from a third party app and you call an intent, like that's going cross app, but and you can stop that stuff just like you can with the CSRF. But
do you remember that bug from at in LA?
Yeah.
That was, I feel like that's kind of like a CARF. Am I right?
Yeah. I would say that's like a pretty good example of like a cross app request forgery, a CARF. Yeah. If you want to call it
a CARF, dude. All
right. Where it's basically
just came up with a new vulnerability name right here.
Yeah. It's basically, and that I think is a really common exploitation scenario within mobile apps.
Yeah.
And it totally breaks CVSS because it's like local only. Because like you need another app on the system for it to be exploitable.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's like a really common thing where you have some functionality that's accessible from other apps on the system that is then exploitable to do all sorts of different functionality. That we've seen full RCE from that. So
yeah,
you can go anywhere from the super basic stuff to full RCE.
Where's our notes on the mobile episode? Because isn't there like for example, if you're doing like a CARF, right, and you need to craft like an intent, there are the intent URLs though, right, that you can like almost embed it into a URL and it like still sends the intent.
Yeah, if I recall correctly, that is no longer supported in like Chrome and Chromium. Oh. I believe it was like it's an older Android thing, and it's up to like implementation essentially about whether or not it's supported. But I might be wrong.
Yeah, I'm looking back through the notes. We'll have to find that and suss it later.
Yeah.
But all right, cool. Well, that's our nice little debate to start us off today, whether or not mobile CSRFs exist or whether CARF is a thing, cross app.
Yeah, CARF is definitely a thing.
CARF is a thing, man. All right.
Yeah.
That's going to be, I'm going to have to go send out a tweet right after this episode. CARF is a thing. That's all I'm going to say.
CARF is a thing. No context.
Yeah, no context, just CARF is a thing.
Cool.
All right, man. Let's get back to the news, yeah? All right.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's see. News is looking I'm not gonna lie, man. News was a little bit thin this week.
Yeah, I think it's just stuff's leading up to DEFCON.
Yeah.
People are holding their cards close to their chest. They don't want to let everything fall just yet, but
I don't doubt that a bit.
I would recommend within like 2 weeks we're gonna have some really crazy amounts of news that we're gonna have to go through.
Yeah, dude. Are you gonna try to do like any Joel solo episodes at DEFCON, you think, or at the H1 event?
I might. I'm not going to be at DEFCON. I'm only going to be at the H1 event.
Okay.
So, we'll see whether or not anybody wants to do like some recording sessions. I'm trying to grab like an extra handheld mic that I can.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Use as sort of like an interview type thing. That I wouldn't feel bad about traveling with. Like this mic, I probably wouldn't travel with because it's expensive, and if something happened during travel, I would be
very sad.
Very mad at myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I believe that, man. I just think the in-person interviews have such a good vibe, with Cosmin and with mystery guest. We did record two episodes when we were in London.
Yeah, that's true.
One of them hasn't been cleared for release yet, so we've got an awesome episode in the backlog that you guys are really going to enjoy. But yeah, I feel like those were sick. So if we can do more of those, that would be really good, I think.
Yeah. I do plan on bringing the recorder, so we'll definitely see. Hopefully I'll get at least one in there.
All right. So the first news item on the list today was actually something that Rezo tweeted out like a couple minutes before we started recording. And I was like, oh, we should just throw this in there. He says, here's a bug bounty tip that I just learned from TCM Security's YouTube live stream. SQLMAP can use the same syntax as curl. So if you do copy as curl in any tool, paste it into a terminal, exchange curl to SQLMAP, it just works.
That's crazy.
That is sick.
SQLMAP also lets you do like raw request inputs, right?
It does.
So you can literally just, that's one of my favorite features, is you can basically just copy paste a full raw HTTP request into a text file, and then you just
I think it's
pipe
like
that into
-R.
SQLMAP. Yeah, I think so. And then it just parses it, and it will do all the magic. You don't have to set a different flag for cookies or any of that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's awesome.
I want to say FUF also does raw request, doesn't it?
I believe it does. Yeah.
Rep raw. Yeah, it does. Dash request file containing the raw HTTP request. I love that, man. That's so helpful.
Yeah, I mean, it just makes it so much easier for testing when you don't have to look up all the different flags, and if you like run it once and something's not working, or maybe it looks like it's working but it's not actually working, just knowing that for sure it's using the exact request that you were using makes it so much easier to do your testing. Yeah,
and easy to insert insertion points both in SQLMAP and FUF. But, you know, it is very convenient when you got a curl request as well, or when you're, for example, if you're finding an SQL, if you're one of those freaks that finds SQLs via just the freaking inspector tool, then, you know, you can right click and copy to curl, and then
I will say the first SQL injection I ever found was using what is it, Hackbar?
Oh, no way, dude.
Yeah,
Hackbar?
the old yeah,
oh my
gosh, this is like way back in the day.
I cannot
Hackbar,
believe
like the
that,
PwnFox, extension.
Dude, I just got like freaking teleported back to like early college, man. Hackbar? Are you serious?
Hackbar. Yeah, I think that's what it was called, right?
Yeah. I just looked it up. It's still a thing. Seems like they've actually added some pretty cool features to it.
That's really cool.
That's pretty sick, man. A lot of reviews too. 50,000 plus users. This is a good extension.
So crazy.
This is not related to security stuff, but I heard someone on a podcast the other day talk about marketing a product by buying Chrome extensions for like 1 cent per user, right?
Really?
Yeah. So they're buying like, you know, 40,000 plus install apps for like $400, you know? And it's like, wow. I don't know how you'd even market to it. I guess maybe you'd like do some sort of invasive little pop-up ad thing, you know, push code to it. But that, I don't know, man.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I wonder like if that violates any of the Chrome web store rules. Because I know that like when you uninstall an extension, there's like a report this extension type thing. And I don't actually know if I've ever reported an extension, but I assume they ask for more info about like why you're reporting it. So
what you got to do is get the Chrome extension, use the Chrome extension to install a service worker on that page, and just automatically say no to that.
Whoa. Yeah, just take over their computer.
Actually, that's an interesting. I feel like Chrome extensions shouldn't be able to install service workers on specific sites, right? I don't know.
Yeah,
I gotta look into
it. Might be a specific permission, because even when you install one, you have to grant it specific like site by site, like whatever it's requesting access to.
Yeah.
So
okay, yeah, that makes sense. I gotta look into that though. That'd be a fun attack vector.
Yeah. There was this tweet you made today actually, where you were like, I'm so annoyed like when you find an IDOR and your sessions get swapped. So I wrote this JS bookmarklet that puts a cookie on the TLD of the target, and then I use request highlighter to highlight each browser a different color. And I do that as well, by the way.
Yeah.
That's like,
thank you. That makes me feel a little bit better.
I have for like 2-person testing is I have an incognito window and I have a normal window in the same browser, and I just do the request highlighter extension to highlight different colors for those 2 sessions. If it's like really, really complicated and I have them both open at the same time. But if it's something super straightforward, I'll usually just like copy paste my auth header or whatever it is. Yeah.
That's what I do. And then like a couple people from the freaking like Twitter went on here and were like, yo, there's already extensions to do this. And apparently one of them is, so there's burp browser profiles, there's auto Chrome, I think is the other one. There's, what was the one that they said? Something Hackfox?
PwnFox?
Yeah, PwnFox. Yeah. That's what it is. And actually I clicked on the PwnFox one. I can't say it. I clicked on the PwnFox one and it looks pretty sick. Like if you look at the highlighting within that, looks really good. So definitely could be worth using, but if you're using Firefox, yuck.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Is that like 0.03% of the population that uses freaking Firefox?
Yeah, way lower than I would have expected.
Same.
But actually, PwnFox also lists in the README that if you're using Chrome, you can use this NCC group tool called
AutoChrome, yeah.
Which does a lot of like default setups and stuff. I used to do something very similar to this where I had a shortcut, like an alias in my terminal that I would use to spin up a new Chrome instance that would run like without the XSS auditor and would have the proxy args and all that kind of stuff. Nowadays, it's so easy to proxy Chrome, and I really don't want the XSS auditor turned off, if I'm being honest, because
it doesn't do anything anymore.
Like, and it's such like a bar in terms of like if something is getting caught by the XSS auditor, which I like you're saying I don't actually know if it does anything anymore.
Yeah.
Then I probably don't want to submit that because what's the attack scenario where somebody has XSS auditor disabled and I'm able to exploit their Chrome?
I feel like XSS auditor got removed, and the only case that I can think of that it actually, I'm not sure if this is XSS auditor or if it's something else, but is like when you click a link that has target equals blank on it, right? So it's supposed to open up a new tab, and that your injection is in that href, right? Then I think it says no, can't do that.
I was just looking. It's been fully removed as of Chrome 78.
Dude, that's so clutch, man. Like I do remember for a brief period when that was around, and it's just like, please, like, just please stop. Like know that I can bypass you. Like, please just don't make me do it, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Hold on one second. My dog's barking. Let me let him outside.
You're good,
We can pause here.
Yeah. So, dude, did you see this JS Weasel thing that got released earlier this week?
I didn't see it get released, but I saw it in the notes. And when I clicked into it, I was like really kind of blown away by like, I mean, one, I think I'd like toyed around with something like an idea like this for the longest time.
I feel like everyone has.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's really, really cool to see it pop up. I was like, who created this? And I did like some digging.
It was Charlie,
It was created by Charlie Erickson.
Yeah.
He's pretty big in the bug bounty community. I'm sure a lot of people kind of know who he is or have heard his name. He is definitely very active in bug bounty forum.
Yeah, that's where I know him from.
And yeah, that's where I know him from as well. It looks like he's kind of done a bunch of startup stuff in the past based on his like Twitter bio and stuff. I hadn't realized all these like companies and stuff that he'd done. So it's a really cool product to see kind of pop up. I would love to try it out. Yeah. I saw the price. Dude, and I don't really want to
I got my hands on it, man. I got my hands on it.
Oh, did you?
I did, yeah.
Awesome.
He actually sent me the beta for it like
cool.
months ago. And I was like, wow, this is sick. Like, I got to talk about this on the podcast. And we decided to hold off at the time because, you know, it was just kind of in beta mode. He was going to do a release around DEFCON. But now is the time to talk about it, man. And I have to say, like, the price is high for sure. Like $1,000 per user per year. That's pricey, man. That's pricey. Yep. And I feel like he kind of needs a freemium of this, you know, like I feel like he needs to release some part of it that's free, and then you know, or maybe even like a short trial to get you hooked on it, because it's hard to take the bite to go straight into $1,000 a year product. However, even the beta version that I played around with was pretty freaking sick. Like it was quite good. And he's added a lot of features since then. The one that kind of blows me away the most, go to the website, right?
Yep.
And go to features in the tab. Scroll down and then look at the fetch packed chunks, right? He says,
yeah.
So I feel like everyone who's ever like deep dived a JavaScript file, or anyone who does that on a regular basis will know what this looks like. Essentially, it's a function that will, you know, has a specific like name. It's normally like number : you know, name, you know, 3 : PDF make, 7 : XLS, and then there's another block, and then there's a dot in that, and then it has a bunch of hashes, and then at the end it has .js. So just from looking at it, you can clearly see they're they're constructing what a normal JS file looks like, with like the hash and then the dash and then the actual name of whatever it is, .js or whatever, right? And so I, time and time again, have written scripts to decode this and get me access to these JavaScript files that are being apparently they're being lazy loaded. That's what the technical term is for that. Like loaded, sort of dynamically on the fly when needed. And so if you never access, the weird admin part of the application that actually loads it, then you'll never actually get the contents of that JS file, in your browser. But JS Weasel somehow parses the JS code that does this, figures out how to, maybe there's like a common structure to it or something, figures out how to reverse this and auto download those JS files, which is really sick.
Yeah, it's super interesting. I would be really, really curious to see how good it does, especially with obfuscated and minified JavaScript. I think that's generally the case where I find stuff has the biggest difficulty, just generally, like any sort of like parsing tool, whether it's symbol recognition or anything like that. Obfuscated JavaScript generally throws a real big wrench into that.
I don't.
It seems like it was kind of designed
JavaScript that much though. Like, I mean, obviously you could just get
literally just a target I was looking at yesterday uses obfuscated like obfuscated and minified.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, dude, that sounds.
I thought
terrible.
It was malware at first. I was actually blown away.
I thought it was malware. That's good. Yeah, no, I mean, I feel like maybe 1 in 50 targets that I look at use actual obfuscated JavaScript, which for any of you blue teamers out there, that is a surefire way to piss off anyone who's trying to hack your app. If there's like, if all of your strings in the app are in hex, frick you. Like, I hate that. Like, so.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. I definitely, I'd like to get my hands on the latest version. I'm kind of, even, with Bug Bounty being my full thing and, pulling in a decent amount each year with money to allocate to tools and stuff like that. I don't know, man. I don't know if it's worth the 1K, but I might see if I can figure out it. But I also don't blame him for anchoring high, like if the price comes down,
it would be better if he like framed it like, $75 a month or something like that. Cause I think what's 1,000 divided by 12 is $83 a month.
Yeah.
Like if it was $83 a month, I might be more willing to click it instead of seeing $1,000 a year per user or something like that. And I totally agree. Like you got to make a profit somehow. Like work isn't free.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if you look generally at like the Bug Bounty community, and so many tools are free or have like a trial or something like that. Like there's very few tools that Bug Bounty hunters pay for.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I think having a something that's useful like this that you have to pay for and having it at such a high bar might be difficult to get Bug Bounty people to get on board with that. Yeah. You could probably sell it for like a quarter of this and get 5 times as many people signing up.
Oh yeah, a lot.
So there's probably some sort of like tweaking he's gonna have to do with that pricing and all that kind of stuff. But in terms of like product and functionality and features, this looks really amazing.
Yeah, dude, I'm excited. I hope the price does come down a little bit because I would definitely use this. There's definitely product market fit here with the Burp Suite plugin, and it's pushing right into this app. That's how it works, by the way, for any of you that aren't at the website. You have a Burp Suite plugin. It shoves everything down to a VS Code plugin that just sucks it all up, beautifies it, adds a bunch of really cool JS highlighting and various layers of pulling stuff out of it.
It'll beautify it. It'll deal with source maps. Yeah. It'll deal with obfuscated JavaScript. It'll deal with chunks. So yeah, it's really interesting. It's funny because whenever I do JavaScript audits, I have like my own internal like brain system that I use where like I've figured out certain patterns that I notice within obfuscated or minified JavaScript or Webpack JavaScript, whatever you want to call it. And those, I'll like use those patterns to identify how stuff is working, but I never really go further than that. I never end up like writing scripts.
Well, okay, Joel,
I just like, I see like
my interest. What are these internal brain patterns?
Yeah. So like there's this like one thing that I notice a lot where Webpack stuff, they'll often, when stuff gets packed together into one giant file, they'll name all the modules as numbers, like incremental numbers, so that they'll be like, you know, module 1, which was actually FS or something, is now 1. And then there'll be some function called like N, and it'll be like N with an argument 1. Man. And then you know that it's importing like module number 1.
I know what you're talking about.
So you can search backwards, and so you can say like, okay, where is the module with like 1 colon? Like where is that in the in the module dictionary, and then you can go and find the source, and you can figure out what module is what.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like the system that I've always used, but this feels so much cleaner and more organized and more concrete than that. And I think it would probably make for a lot less guesswork if it really works the way that it claims it does. So yeah, this is really, really awesome. And I also like that the website looks just like a like a GitHub product launch.
Oh, does it really?
It really does. Yeah.
Oh yeah. With the big text, right? And with one word, you know, highlighted. Yeah, it's true.
Exactly.
You're not wrong, man. That's a good call. All right, let's see what else we got. Okay. The only other thing that I really had on the list today was this, like literally right before we started recording, freaking Rojan tweeted out a link to a talk that they had done at Tinder Security Labs about an RC in various services largely via GitHub Actions workflows and exploiting those, which is like pretty much the most Rojan thing I've ever heard in my life, right? Like he always goes after this like out there, you know, bespoke stuff. And so, yeah, I don't know. Did you see this at all? Because I actually didn't get the chance to actually check out the talk. I just clicked through the slides before we launched the
I didn't really get to check it out. It's kind of crazy. I don't know if I should say, but maybe we'll cut this out. But I work with Rojan,
right
and you know, he's always doing really amazing research, so it's cool to see some of this go public and see it be talked about sort of on a more public stage than
for sure.
all the internal communications that we have about it. But yeah, I mean, Rojan is obviously a very, very talented hacker. Him and all the other people that we have on our team are just some of the best, like bug bounty folks, as well as just hackers as a whole that I know. And so it's really awesome to have them on the team and see them do this kind of research, and then you actually get to talk about it publicly at conferences.
Yeah, dude, not gonna lie, I'm jealous of y'all's team over there. Rojan hit me up the other day about, wow, this is a while back actually, about an opening on y'all's team, and I was like,
yep.
Shoot, man, like if there's anything to pull me away from freaking full-time bug bounty, it would be a full-time research role on that team. And I was like, so
yeah, I mean, I was just reading through one of their internal reports today, and it's very like, I think it would enjoy it if
oh my gosh,
you know, there was another opportunity that came up. I think it would be something that would totally be your vibe, because it's literally just like hacking. It's just
heck, man, that sounds awesome. So we'll link this report down in the description for the podcast, or this I guess these slides and YouTube video talk. Should be some really high quality content. Also, I love injecting into the supply chain, right, rather than doing other stuff, you know, later after the product's been pushed. Anything with like dependency confusion, attacking the continuous integration pipeline, all of that stuff, super cool. And I happen to know a couple other players in the space that are getting ready to launch products or will be launching products within the next year surrounding this that I think are going to really be very helpful.
Yeah.
So excited.
Actually, now that I'm looking through all the slides on this, yes, I did know a little bit about this.
Yeah.
But seeing the slides and seeing it like talked about definitely gives you a lot more context than what I had. So I'm gonna have to check out the actual video of the talk later.
Yeah, for sure. I'll go watch this as well. All right. As we alluded to in the beginning of this episode with our debate, we are talking about CSRFs today. And yeah, essentially, I feel like CSRF is a vulnerability that a lot of people feel like got deleted with SameSite cookies, and it's just not the case. And there's some, you know, stringent conditions that you got to be on the lookout for, but I still see this all the time on all levels of hardenedness of target. So I was thinking we'd kind of dive into that today, discuss some techniques that we've seen, discuss some technicalities, and see where it takes us.
Yeah, 100%.
Alrighty, let's see. Okay, so first thing that I kind of wanted to talk about was, for any of you that are out there that haven't heard of a CSRF, let's just go ahead and give a little bit of a debrief for that. That is cross-site request forgery. This attack occurs when the victim clicks on the link from the attacker has control of the user's browser inside of the page, and the attacker somehow, either by doing window.open or by doing a redirect or submitting an HTML form, is able to push the user via redirection to some specific page on the victim application. It could be a GET request or it could be a POST request, and that request will trigger some sort of functionality in that application and perform some action on behalf of the user, since that request is being done with the user's cookies. And yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was just gonna say, I think like the most like basic example that I can think of, just going back to like my very, very early security days, was bank account. The typical example is that you are using bank.com and there's a transfer endpoint that you can call to transfer money from your account to someone else's account. And if there's a CSRF there, then another website could force you to call that transfer endpoint using your own cookies in your own session and transfer money somewhere else. And if there's no CSRF check, then that could happen completely without anybody stopping that.
Yeah, for sure.
That's what always made it click for me, is just like, oh, it's you performing actions by yourself, but someone else is causing you to do it implicitly.
Yeah. And dude, I'm pretty sure that example is in literally every piece of CSRF education literature out there. Yeah. So I wonder if that ever happened. Like, I wonder if the person that created, or invented CSRF was like
2002.
Whoa,
yeah, it's like
I can make. What if I force the user? Let me log into my bank and see if this works. And that's like the original write up. It's like passing around material on the dark web, like, for bank.com, you can trigger transfers. I don't know why that's my voice for early day hackers. Like, maybe
it's me, early 2000s.
Yeah, hacker. Exactly. Like, I don't know, but that would be interesting. Okay, so everything was fine and dandy for years. We were finding CSRFs, as they're affectionately named, left and right. And then one fateful day, the SameSite cookie default lax setting was imposed by Chromium,
dun, dun, dun.
The monster browser that destroys all of our hopes and dreams. And since then, it has been a lot trickier to do that. And the reason for that is that SameSite cookies are any cookie that's set now is being explicitly set to, or implicitly, set to SameSite lax by default. What that means is that there's a very specific set of conditions that must be completed before you can trigger a request to be with those cookies to be sent. Those conditions are that you have to be making a top level navigation. So that means that essentially the URL bar up at the top has to be changing in order for those cookies to be sent. It can only be done with a GET and a POST request. And with the POST request, it can only be done within a 2-minute window of that cookie being set. That is called the lax plus post sort of caveat. It's a temporary thing. We don't know how long it's going to last. I think it's probably going to last for a while. But that even may fade and fail us. So
that's really interesting behavior, that it's like, it feels almost very arbitrary that it's a 2-minute window.
Yeah.
And that it just kind of works, because what happens like after, like, say that happens in the first 5 seconds.
Right.
Okay. What about the other minute and 55 seconds?
Yeah. I think it, it was just sort of a catch-all for very slow loading single sign-on services. So I'm not exactly sure, why they chose 2 minutes arbitrarily. But I do think it's a cool technique. And if you can still use it, it's very helpful for this technique. You've probably seen this before, but exploiting that where you trigger a login or a re-login, right? And what that will do is get the cookie reset, right? And even if, the user has already got an established session, this can be done oftentimes with a GET request in a window.open, right? And then once the cookie is reset, that timer's got refreshed, and then you can do a top level post, which will trigger the CSRF. So it's very important nowadays, if you're going to try to find a post-based CSRF, to have some sort of gadget which will refresh the session, get that cookie reset so that you can take advantage of the lax plus post window.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, it's not like the biggest blocker, but it is kind of like an additional part of the chain that you now have to be aware of. And I think if you were coming from a more traditional background and you just went to exploit a CSRF, you'd be like, why isn't this working? And I think it's just because like there's new levels that are now at play here.
Yeah, for sure. And so go. Do you see this link that I put in there by Teddy Katz? You see that?
Yes.
Yeah, click on that really quick. We can talk through this vuln. I think this one's really cool. So I want to add. So before we jump into that, I'm going to go ahead and talk about the conditions for the modern conditions, the now conditions for a CSRF, right? And those are this: the content type must be text plain, XWW form URL encoded, or multi-part form data. One of those three, right? There might be other ones. I feel like I've seen text/JSON being used before in a CSRF. I could be wrong about that. And we're not talking about any of this Flash stuff that you can do with Flash. That's outdated. No one uses that anymore. So it must be one of those three. The request must be a GET or a POST request, and it must be a top-level navigation. So the URL bar at the top needs to change as a result. And that will result in the cookies being sent under the same site, under the rule of this cruel monarch, the same site cookie. The exception to that is this cool blog post that I linked here. So let's take a look at that.
Yeah, this is by Teddy Katz.
Yeah, dude, this guy's rocks
on his blog about GitHub OAuth bypass.
Yeah, so this guy is pretty much exclusively a GitHub hacker as far as I can see, and I just freaking loved this bug. So did you get a chance to see it before the pod, or am I preaching to you as well?
Dude, I think I feel like I read this a long time ago, because I've hacked GitHub since this blog post came out, in the years since this has come out, and so I feel like I have seen something along the lines of this, but I don't know if I've read it specifically. So go ahead. You're not totally.
Dude, I feel kind of bad, because like I do this thing where I go to people's blogs before a live hacking event that are like really good at hacking the target that we're gonna hack, and I just read all of them, right? Like very fresh, right? Very fresh in my memory. And twice in 2022, I found vulns and the people that wrote about those, that using the techniques from those blogs, and the people that wrote those blogs duped to me.
Oh,
so
no.
I got the main report and they got the dupe report.
You're stealing their techniques.
And they're like, bro, I should never have blogged about this, which is very sad, because it's like, we do like to see sharing in the community and stuff, but also like, can't hate, what do they say? Don't hate the player, hate the game, hate the hate the game, exactly. Don't hate the player. Something like that.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, this specific one, pretty cool. We'll link it. It's called bypassing GitHub's OAuth flow. This is an example of CSRF that does not use GET or POST. This is a CSRF done with a head request, which was really interesting to me. Essentially, the TLDR of this is that the head request gets routed to the same spot in the application. I want to say is this Rails?
Yeah, it's Rails.
Yeah, it's Rails. So the way that the Rails router is defined, it says, match this specific path, and then there's via, and then you provide a list of valid HTTP
methods,
verbs. Yeah.
Get, post.
Thank you. I couldn't come up with it. Yeah. You provide get and post. And then so there's just get and post in this array in the blog post, but there's also some quirk in Rails where they just want head to kind of work seamlessly. They don't want you to have to be able to work on head being something different than get.
Right.
So head also gets routed to wherever get is routed to. And inside,
that's super interesting.
Yeah, I thought so too. And inside the request, it's inside the function that deals with this route. There's this if statement that says if request.get, then do this, right? Otherwise, do that. So it's not checking, it's a pretty safe, to be honest, like I would have definitely not caught this in code review, because it's like, okay, only get and post are allowed, but and we've got get, so the only alternative can be post, right? But that's not quite the case. The head method can also trigger this, and it actually, in this case, it was triggering the same thing as a post request would do, which allowed for the OAuth bypass, which landed him a pretty sick bounty. I think there was a 25K bounty, right?
25K, yeah, it was. Yeah, that's really interesting. Honestly, I would have expected that a head request would behave more like a get request than a post request. So I would have expected it.
Exactly.
If it was going to be an implicit thing like this, it would go through the get handler. But, maybe it was actually, coming through as like request.head or something. So if you look at the check where it says if it's request.get, and then else is catching everything else. And so it doesn't even have to be behaving like a post request. It's just if it's not a get request, then it does this alternative behavior, which would be to grant permissions. I wonder if options does the same thing. I assume it probably does, because head and options are special cases, right? Where those are really meant for the browser to do pre-check requests and that kind of stuff to make sure that the endpoints exist or are reachable and that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, I thought the same thing before while prepping for this episode, and I looked into it, and I think options, at least normally, they're sent by the browser without any authentication attached to them. I'll have to double check on that because this was a while back, but if they are sent with authentication attached to them, that could be a really interesting way to potentially exploit some of this behavior.
Yeah, I would imagine that the browser won't be sending it now, but maybe they have to, because maybe like an options request would fail if it doesn't have the right authentication on it. I don't really know.
Yeah.
But that might be an interesting area to target.
For sure. Yeah, so this is also just I feel like this is just a good quirk to know about in Rails as well, is that head will get routed to the same place that get will. And if there is this sort of, if get else do this sort of mentality, then this bug could very well, I absolutely anticipate that this bug is present in other code bases as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's gotta be. I can't imagine that. Ruby is very, very commonly used, and this seems like a strange type of implicit behavior for it to be there.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised if it has other implications. As you can tell in the blog post, this is actually down to how GitHub is implementing it.
Right.
Where it's not really like an implicit vulnerability. It's just that the fact that how they're handling whether or not it's a GET request or some other type of request is influencing the behavior of the app. And so if there's other services that are written in Rails that aren't doing an explicit check for a head or an options, or they're doing some sort of fallback behavior like this is, then you'd be able to exploit that in the same way.
Yeah, I totally agree. So just as a takeaway, list a couple takeaways here. Rails, definitely play around with head requests for that. For CSRF, you need to have content type text plain, XForm, XWW form URL encoded, or multipart. It needs to be get, a post, or a head, likely request, and it must be a top level navigation. That's kind of interesting to me though, because this was before, now that I'm saying all of this together, this was before SameSite cookies. This was 2019. So I'm wondering if head requests, if that even works anymore. Because I don't know that you can send a head request via top level navigation. So how would you get the cookie to send?
Yeah, I wonder.
It might have to be coupled with a like insecure configuration for SameSite or something like that in order to actually get this to work.
Yeah. Because when did SameSite come out? That was like
2020.
Yeah.
February 4th, 2020. Stab in the heart, man.
Yeah. Super interesting.
Yeah. So those are the takeaways there. Let's talk a little bit about some exploitation techniques, and then we'll kind of jump. Do you have anything you want to talk about for mobile CSRF? I'm not sure if I guess CARF, as we affectionately named it.
Yeah. So a lot of that stuff we talked about during the mobile app episode, but I think generally it's the same kind of stuff that you'd already be looking for. So JavaScript bridges, expose URL schemas. If there is any kind of internal web view, the non-exposed URL schemas are also a good target for that, because if you can find some way to point the internal web view to an arbitrary URL, then you can potentially exploit those internal URL schemas that would be only accessible from within the app, and you may be able to escalate that further to do who knows what. But that I'll actually talk a little bit about that when we talk about our specific bugs, because the specific bug I have is very similar to that.
Sweet, solid. We'll wait for that then. So I wrote down a bunch of exploitation techniques here. Let's just kind of roll through them one by one. Actually, before we get into this section, I do want to add one more thing about SameSite. If you have any questions or concerns about SameSite, definitely check out the Jubob's post, The Great SameSite Confusion. We've talked about it on the pod several times before. Really good stuff. So on the note of SameSite, though, there is this thing, SameSite strict, which is rare, but I actually have seen it, and I've got a funny story about it, dude. Actually, so did you meet So Sakaguchi? Did you meet one of my friends that was from Japan? That I feel like you might have met him in Vegas or in Austin.
Yeah, I wasn't at either of the Las Vegas or Austin events. So
you were in Vegas, weren't you?
No, I was supposed to come, but then I had to cancel last minute because I had a thing happen.
Oh heck, man! Well, you might not have met him then. But
was he one of the people that flew over and stayed with you?
Yeah. So he was. Okay, so we were hacking together.
I was chat a little bit.
Yeah, he's one of my friends from Japan. Great hacker now. I was training him, with some stuff, and there's this app that I guess I can't specify. And it looks very vulnerable to CSRF, right? But here's the thing, it deletes your account, and he actually uses the app, right? So we caught the request, right? We caught the request in burp, and we're like, okay, look, there's no, CSRF tokens, there's no origin checks, or it doesn't look like there's an origin check. I guess you can't know until you submit it. But it looks good, and we had found other bugs that look similar to this in the past on that website. So I was like, okay, man, here's the deal. We gotta just build the POC and give it a shot. This is a several $1,000 bug here. And the process for creating an account was really long and hard, and had required phone numbers and all sorts of garbage, right?
Okay, yeah.
So we can really just create another account. So we run the exploit on his account, fully expecting to be getting, hearing cha-ching noises, and I don't know how it ended up, being this way, but they had SameSite strict, right? So we deleted his account with something else, to try to prove it, that the origin check wasn't working. It's like, okay, great, this is good, and we go back to do it again with another account. And the SameSite strict cookies, they have SameSite strict on, which means that it will never send a cookie from one site to another site. There's not a GET request, not a POT request. It just doesn't happen, right? And so at the end, it wasn't vulnerable to CSRF, and we deleted his whole account on this app.
Deleted his whole account?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
It was so bad. It was on a music app that was popular where he lives. So I felt really bad, man.
Yeah, it's funny because I was actually looking back at I did have a really low impact CSRF that I reported many years ago, and it was I don't even think I tested it in the traditional way, because SameSite wasn't a thing,
right?
So all I did was check if I set origin to null, then does it work? Yes. And it redirected me to an arbitrary domain.
Well, if there's no other checks, if there's no refer check, which can be circumvented, if there's no, CSRF tokens in the request, you'd think it would be,
Right.
But,
right.
All right.
Yeah. Vulnerable, but not exploitable.
Yeah. Exploitation techniques. So just a couple things I just want to note on this. These are just kind of pro tips section on CSRF. Look at the SameSite values for your cookies. Okay. So one thing that I will notice, Joel, did you just literally OCD out?
Listen, I'm sorry.
What is wrong with you? So literally in the doc, I wrote
Damn,
SameSite.
I wasn't expecting to get called out.
No, you're getting called out for that, dude. I literally wrote SameSite with no capitalization and no dash in the middle in the notes. And while we're talking about
one lowercase word, SameSite.
Joel goes in here and capitalizes it and adds the dash like a total maniac.
I was like, look. Now I know that it's SameSite.
Now it's SameSite, not
SameSite.
Some site, some site. But yeah, so the tip that I was going to say with this is make sure you're checking your cookies. Note that SameSite, if SameSite is not set, if the SameSite attribute is not set on a cookie, then that will be SameSite lacks by default, which is different than SameSite lacks explicit. Okay. SameSite lacks explicit when it's explicitly set, is not subject to the lax plus post sort of accommodation that they've made for people transitioning, because if you're setting it explicitly, then obviously you're not one of the people that's transitioning to a architecture that supports this. So that can be a gotcha. That can get you some NAs or some informatives if you don't check that. So yeah, keep an eye on that.
Another thing was the method params. I've seen this a lot on Ruby, especially.
Oh, really?
There's like a really weird functionality.
Ruby's getting wrecked today.
Yeah, Ruby's super weird. I think this is specifically some like weird Rails configuration or something, but there's like a method parameter that you can put in the URL.
Yeah.
And it will allow you to change the method of your request. Even if it's sent as a GET request, you can have it send it as a POST request instead. It gets interpreted on the back end as like a POST request. And that adds all sorts of different levels of complexity now, because you can send a GET request with a body, right?
Yeah. I'm not sure if you can make the browser do that though. Can you?
Yeah, that's the one caveat is, again, it's like vulnerable but not exploitable, where
yeah. I'm not sure. That would be a kind of interesting area to research, because it would be, but I feel like most of the routing software, most of the web servers would just kind of consider those body, either just delete those body params on a GET request, or just stick them as they were, a query parameter. So I'm not sure how that would get parsed. But like you said, there's definitely the option of sending a GET request and then setting this method equals post, right? And then having the server parse it as a post request. That's a really good method.
Right. Yep.
Let me grab some water. Heck, I'm out of water.
You're out of water.
Yeah, I'm just going to cough into the mic real quick here. Yeah, this is how we know when we need to wrap up the episodes, is like Justin's out of water. His throat is dying. Yeah, so let me look at some of these other things. So obviously, you want to be looking for any GET-based requests that will result in some change in the application. Right? Because if you have that, you're pretty much just set anyway, unless they're setting some weird, header or something like that. So be on the lookout for that. And then the other thing which we alluded to earlier is I feel like, and this is sort of, I'm going to release something else on the pod about this later, but I feel like not enough people, when they look at applications, are keeping in mind various gadgets that they need, right? These are parts of chains. These are links in your chain that you need to find. So for example, if you hack all day and you don't find anything, you can feel like garbage, right? Or you can look back and you can say, okay, well, now I know that if I go to this specific area of the application, I'll get this error that will tell me, this about the application. Or if I provide a valid ID here and an invalid ID, then it allows me to validate which IDs are valid or not valid. Or I found this endpoint that I can force the user to refresh their session cookie, right? That's the most applicable in this scenario. Those gadgets are very valuable. So even if you haven't found a bug, make sure you're noting down these gadgets. And those, if you are, and you're keeping those in the front of your mind, your brain will figure out a way to utilize these and figure out a way to chain these into different bugs. If you're skipping over them, if you're not emphasizing these, then you're never just going to get the full chain into place. So that's another tip. That sort of gadget-based methodology.
Yeah, for sure. And we've talked about like notes. You need to take notes. Yeah. Just like if you find something that's weird or strange behavior, probably not like quite a bug, but could be used with something else to become a bug. IDOR, like ID leaks, anything like that. If they're using a UUID and you find something that at least leaks a list of UUIDs, that's a great thing that you can chain together as like a gadget, where by itself, maybe it's not the most severe thing, but if you can then find an IDOR that uses that ID, that makes it so much more severe.
Yeah.
So anything that's like along those lines, just be keeping notes of the different like weird behaviors that you're seeing. And this is about, as we say, becoming intimate with the application.
It is, man. It is.
This is part of the process of understanding how does the application work, what are the different moving parts? What are the different functionalities that exist? Is one specific part not secure that can then be used with another specific part that's not secure to then leverage that further? Those are the types of things that we really want to look for.
Yeah, for sure. I think, yeah. And so there's lots of different ways that you can approach these vulnerabilities, these applications that you're trying to find. And we're not trying to say, everyone needs to take notes, everyone needs to keep in mind the gadgets, but that's something that's definitely worked for me quite a bit in the past. And I think it's a helpful methodology. Let's see what else we got here. Okay, well, this is an interesting one. So if you, and we've tweeted about this a little bit as well when Rezo mentioned something like this, but one of the main ways that I find CSRF nowadays is servers that are using just plain JSON requests. And, as we know, JSON as a content type is not vulnerable to cross-site request forgery. However, if you change the content type from JSON to text plain or to XWW form URL encoded, then it may be vulnerable. It could be that the server is parsing that content type, or if you're sending text plain, it could just consider that as JSON. So those are good areas to check. It normally only takes one or two different checks, because I guess maybe this is my experience. I won't prime you otherwise, but in my experience, I don't check every single endpoint for this. I check like one or two endpoints for this to see if the server actually just does not mess with, XWW form URL encoded or text plain. I don't test all of them, but I could be missing some there. So whatever testing style fits you best, as long as you're checking if you can convert content types.
Yeah, for sure. I think if you think about it from a developer's perspective, it's probably going to be implemented in like one place. So it's going to be added as a middleware or a content type handler for the entire server, versus being on an endpoint by endpoint basis, because usually it's being processed at a lower level than it is like at the route handler. It's probably going to be on the server level. So I think your testing methodology there probably makes sense to just like see if this host is vulnerable to that type of confusion or changing of types, and see if it's flexible in that way of parsing. And then if it's not, I wouldn't waste too much time. I think it's really interesting to think about how CSRF is one of the more like old school type of vulnerabilities, because the way that it gets exploited is still using a form element. You know what I mean? It's not like anything crazy. It's not like custom modern JS. It's literally just a form. It's just a form HTML element. And so you do get restricted by some of those bounds in terms of how a form element actually works, what capabilities it has, what content type it is, how it encodes data, all that kind of stuff, which is why it needs to be either text plain or form URL encoded, because forms don't send JSON. And apps that are sending JSON are typically JavaScript based, where you're clicking a button and that's triggering an on-click handler, which is then making a fetch request or whatever it is in the backend that's actually triggering the API request, versus sending a very, traditional HTML form. Yeah.
And I liked what you said about HTML sort of being limited by old HTML in that capacity, because we do still exploit CSRFs via form elements. And I'm looking right now, you can set the content type on a form element using the enc type attribute and the method via the method attribute. I'm a little salty because I went and looked into this enc type attribute the other day, and it would be really cool if we could specify not only the content type but the character encoding in here as well, because we were looking into, this is a little bit of a rabbit trail, but we were looking into bypassing WAFs, payloads using encoding. I think Sarush tweeted something out about that. And we were just kind of going back and forth on it. I was like, man, I wonder if we can force the browser to send a request using UTF-7 or something like that, right? And I was thinking, man, that the enc type enc type should do it. And I think even the HTML spec mentions that it should be able to do it, but it freaking doesn't do it, man. That is salty.
Well, I mean, this wouldn't be the first time where the HTML spec says one thing, and every single thing on the internet says that the spec follows this one thing, and it doesn't. So maybe it's worth looking into and actually verifying. Honestly, since that thing that we found with the base element, it really has me wondering how much of HTML is strictly enforced to what the spec says it should be.
Yeah.
And how much flexibility there is in terms of weird edge cases and stuff like this.
Yeah, I'm sure there's tons, just more and more to uncover. So the other couple other little things I had here, obviously making sure you're changing your post request to get request. It's one of the, I pretty much forced Kaido to do that. Because I told them like, hey, this is one of the main features I use in Burp, this change request functionality. So they did put it into Kaido, which is great. And so converting your post request to your get request makes it really easy to check. And then, so the other thing that I kind of wanted to mention was sometimes companies will do sneaky stuff like check the origin header and check the refer header to ensure for their CSRF checks. And those,
which is technically proper CSRF protection. That plus a CSRF token is really, I believe, the recommendation.
It can
or
be.
At least it was.
It can be. There are ways to bypass that. So for the origin, and I guess if it's configured properly, there's not ways to bypass it. But for the origin, you can get the origin to be set to null for a request by doing it within a iframe that is the source of that iframe. The source attribute of that iframe is a data URI. And that will remove the origin from that iframe and allow you to just run your HTML document that you've defined inside of that data URI inside of there, and then you can try to trigger it that way. I'm wondering now that I'm saying it, because a lot of these techniques are a little antiquated. I'm wondering that isn't going to pass the SameSite checks now, though, right? I don't know.
And with cores and CSP, you'd also get blocked a lot of the time by not having the right URL or not being able to even open data URLs.
Yeah,
CSP.
I need to look that up and see if there's any way. Is there? Yeah, I'm gonna research this afterwards. Any way to send a request with the null in the origin, with nowadays SameSite stuff. That's kind of interesting. Yeah. I sort of didn't apply the SameSite stuff in my brain to this technique. So that's that. Perhaps maybe an origin check might be enough nowadays. Especially if you are handling the null case, it would definitely be enough, like you were saying.
Yeah.
But if you're not handling the null case, it could still be enough because the browser may not allow you to do it. The only other one was the refer, and I was going to say this one. This is not a secure technique for CSRF because we have the ability to control the refer policy, which determines what is set, right? And actually, I didn't even write this down, Joel, but I actually had a cool bug that I found the other day because of this. Because what it was doing was it was sending this. Gosh, I love this bug. I can't believe I didn't get this in the notes for this episode. So here's what it was. I'm just going to drop everything and tell you about it right now.
Okay.
So it was a CSRF. It was a CSRF, of course. And it was doing the CSRF check via the refer, right? And so I was like, okay, easy peasy. And all it was doing, it was checking to make sure that site.com/ was in the refer. So I was like, okay, easy peasy. I should just be able to create a folder called site.com/ and execute my exploit from there. And then that should pass the check, right? Mm-hmm. Wrong, because you can't, whenever you're sending, they deleted the refer parameter, the paths from the refer parameter nowadays, right?
Okay. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So
interesting.
It just sends, by default, HTTPS, the top level, the FQDN / to cross origin requests.
I thought that was only for origins.
What do you mean?
I thought only origin headers did that behavior. I didn't know that refers, because that was a big problem for a long time where API tokens and stuff would get leaked through a refer header, because refer is the exact refer URL, whereas origin would be just the origin URL.
Exactly. That and I think that's the reason why they removed it, was because it was lit, because what you could do is you could get an HTML injection, right, with an image tag, and then redirect the user to that specific page, with their access token in the URL, and that access token would get leaked via the referrer to your image that you inject into the page, and you got an ATO. But anyway, they removed that, and so I bypassed it, because you can actually set the referrer policy on your own page to send the full URL. It doesn't have to be, since you control the page that you're sending from, you can use I think it's a meta tag. You should look that up really quick. See if you can find anything. But the meta tag, I believe, allows you to set the referrer policy, and there are several options for that. One of those is send the full URL in the referrer. And so plopped that into my page, sent the user to that page, and it sent the full URL, which allowed me to bypass the CSRF check and got the bug. So I don't know, man, that sort of fringe stuff like that just gets my blood pumping. I love it.
Yeah. So there's actually two ways to do it. There, you can set it, as a header, refer -policy. With either like no refer, origin, same origin, strict origin, unsafe URL. And then you can also set it with HTML through a meta tag, like you thought. Meta, the name is refer, and then the content would be like origin, for example.
Interesting. Yeah, I think I'm looking at the same page that you are.
Mozilla docs.
Yeah, the meta tag is so interesting, dude. Like, because
a lot of functionality.
Yeah, we were kind of deep diving this last time with like, when we were looking into base and stuff like that. But this doesn't even use the HTTP equiv attribute, to like pretend like it's an HTTP header, right? This is actually just a different thing. So I gotta find some way to just read everything that a meta tag can do, because I'm sure there's some weird stuff there.
Yeah, and I'm not really sure where the right place to look either, because I feel like even if we look at the HTML spec, it's not really what you need to look at. You should probably look at like the Chrome source code or something like that.
Dude, I don't want to look at the Chrome source code, man. That hurts my eyes. Don't like that.
Yeah, me neither. Cool.
All right, so that's all I had for the actual content of the CSRF stuff. Yep. Yeah, that's all I had.
You want to go into bugs real quick?
Yeah, let's do it, man. Okay, so I already presented one bug because I just got hype. I don't know. I love that, man. But yeah, this next one is actually really cool too. So this is a CSRF that I found at a live hacking event in 2022. And there was this obscure domain that was way out there, right? That used super old legacy garbage. And through some like weird trickery, I figured out a way to get an account on that domain. There's like a hidden sign up page that was like, I found in like a Wayback Archive thing, right? So I got into that app, and I'm like seeing $signs at this point, right? Because it's like, it was in scope too. They had star in scope. So I was like, oh, this is clutch. And nice. I did get like, 5 figures worth of bounties from that specific domain. One of them was the CSRF, which was cool. Now, how this one worked was it sort of had 4 parts of the chain. Okay. So I needed to send 2 top level requests. This required 1 click. So you come to the attacker's page and it triggers 1 click. From that, I could trigger 2 pieces of code. Okay. I could trigger, there's a little hack here. You can use the form, the button within the form. You can harvest 1 click and get 2 actions to be triggered. You can get a form submission because the button got clicked, and you can also use the on click. So this actually allowed me to open up 2 pages with 1 click.
Nice.
And so the first thing that I did was I login CSRF'd the victim into this old legacy website from the main website. I found a way to do that where you can, transfer the user in. Okay. Then the second request, which was still pending, by the way, that was sent to a PHP script on my server that was set to sleep for like 2 seconds or whatever, right? So it sort of delays and makes sure that the user is actually authed into the website first. Then it redirects the victim. I think I had to do a 307 too, because I think it was a post request. I'd issue a 307, which redirects the user to with the same method, post method, to a different URL where the CSRF actually occurred. And all of this was happening, when the user came to the attacker's page, and it was actually a CSRF to affect the user's account in that sort of weird, obscure, domain, which is not very impactful. And I thought that they wouldn't like it, but through the data pipelines, that data actually ends up back on the main application and had some pretty painful effects on the main application. So that ended up getting accepted. It used a couple cool tricks, which is why I mentioned it. It used this double sort of on-click thing, and then also the delay script, I think, was a nice piece as well.
Yeah, that's super interesting. That aspect of sort of the double action where you click a button and you take advantage of the on-click as well as the native form element behavior.
Yeah, it's an interesting little trick. I have to refresh that in my mind, because there are definitely scenarios where you need two click triggered actions.
Yeah, super interesting.
All right, what you got for yours?
Mine? Okay, so for mine is more like the kind of thing that I talked about, where it's basically the closest you can get to a CSRF without it being a CARF.
Without it being a cross
app. Yeah, so it's not cross app, but it is cross domain within the app. So essentially, I think I can talk about this. Yes, they're public. Okay, so TikTok. Everybody knows TikTok. This was way back before TikTok was popular. This was in 2019. And so TikTok, I don't know if they still have this functionality, but essentially you could scan a QR code within the app, and that would, I think, take you to somebody's profile or take you to like a post or something like that. It was built in. But the thing is that QR codes can have a lot of different data encoded to them.
Right.
And so I realized that you could just encode an arbitrary QR code pointing to a URL, and it would open it within the app, in the internal web view within the app, because the way that it routed was that it would try and use the internal URL schemas, and typically it would be encoded with some, internal schema that would open someone's profile or something like that. But if you put just HTTP in there, then it'll open it in an internal web view.
So wait, so this is, do you have to scan it within the TikTok app, or can you just scan it with your phone? You have to scan it within the app, right?
Within the app.
Yeah.
So the attack scenario would be like, you open your TikTok app, you go and scan some QR code to go to someone's profile, you get popped.
Right.
And so basically this would open up an internal web view that then had access to this JavaScript bridge and a bunch of other internal functionality that you could then take advantage of, because typically they weren't expecting that you would be within this context. And so there was a whole bunch of different checks in terms of like the functions and stuff that you could call, but there was this caveat, which is that the if you were like calling the JavaScript bridge, it had this check called is safe host, and it would essentially, it had a list of allowed URLs. The problem is that it was checking if host.equals or host.ends with blank, then proceed. And you may have picked up on this already, but .ends with is not safe. If it was just .equals, that would have been fine, but .ends with is very, very flexible.
.ends with, and then with no preceding dot. Is that correct?
Correct. And so a lot of the domains in the list did have subdomains. However, for example, TikTok.com did not. And so I purchased the domain, not TikTok.com.
Nice. Exploit TikTok.com.
Yes. And it was like $5.
Yeah.
And so I put together a POC. And basically, if you scan a URL, it points to not TikTok.com with my POC. It would open it up. And then from there, because it passes the host check, you're able to talk with the JavaScript bridge. And so there was a ton of functionality behind this once you get past that check, where you could create pop-ups within the app. You could install APKs.
Dude.
You could prompt the user. You
What
could
the
pull
heck?
down user information about who the current user is. So there was like a ton of functionality that you could do from that point. And that's kind of like the CSRF aspect, where it's on my host. It's on nottiktok.com, but I'm talking with the app over the JavaScript bridge, over the internal URL schemas, and I'm getting information across app that I really shouldn't be able to. So it's kind of like cores, kind of like CSRF, you know. But yeah, that's kind of my mobile example. And I think there's a ton of other examples out there that are more the CARF stuff that we talked about, where it's like creating intents from a third-party app that then do something similar, where it's exploiting app functionality that you normally wouldn't be able to reach unless you were coming from a third-party app or from some third-party standpoint, like a web view within the app or something like that.
For sure. That's a cool technique, because there are a lot of apps that have built-in QR code scanners. So I bet other apps that have bug bounty programs out there are vulnerable to opening the web view via QR code like that, right? With just a domain. And you might have to sort of double click into the code a little bit to see if there are like an origin check or something like that. But dude, I love those moments when you get in there and you're like, oh shoot, there's an origin check. Like, I'm in trouble. And then you look at it, it's like ends with, and you're like,
never
yes, I love that.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh man, it just freaking gets the blood pumping.
Yeah. So don't, if you see something, look into it fully until you're for sure that it can't be exploited, because lots of times there'll be weird checks like that.
Good stuff, man. All right. Anything else we want to cover before we wrap up today?
Oh yes, one thing. So you may have seen on Twitter, NahamSec, Ben, our buddy, he is on his way. He's very, very close to 100,000 subscribers on YouTube.
Yeah.
So I think let me double check where his actual number is, but I think he was at like 95K, 94K, 95K. So he has a goal. He'd love to hit 100K before DEFCON. And if he does, he's going to shave his whole beard. He's going to shave his whole head.
Dude, he's going to be hairless. What if we can get him to do the eyebrows too?
Yeah, maybe eyebrows too. So definitely, if you aren't already, go check out NahamSec's channel. It's at NahamSec on YouTube, and give him a subscription. He's pumping out amazing content. He live streams. He does so much insightful stuff, kind of similar to the stuff that we do, but like on another level. And definitely would recommend going and looking at his channel and looking at his content.
That's the call to action for today, y'all. Today,
subscribe to Ben.
Go to NahamSec's channel. Hit that subscribe button. We want to see a bald and eyebrowless NahamSec, so please do that for us.
Yeah,
it's actually a win-win for Ben, right? Because he gets he's got like 100K subscribers, right? So he's like pretty well known. And I'm sure if he goes to DEFCON, people are going to be like, NahamSec, awesome. Let's get a picture together or something like that, right? So if he does get up to 100K subscribers, then he gets 100K subscribers, and he also gets to shave his head and his beard and his eyebrows, and no one's going to notice him, so he can just kind of skate around DEFCON like he's not famous.
Yeah. And then all the photos will be great memories of.
Yeah. Oh, that's true. Yeah. But the people that do recognize him will have a priceless photo forever.
Exactly. It's like a limited edition NahamSec.
Limited edition bald NahamSec. Dude, frick. It's not a good year for me to skip DEFCON. Heck.
Yeah, you're really missing out. But I understand. There are more important life events.
There are, man. There are.
Yes.
For sure.
Yeah.
All right, with that, that's a wrap, yeah?
Yep, that's the pod.
Peace.
Peace.